Well, the nation is this morning mourning as one of the greatest AFL players we've ever seen. Ron Barassi passed away yesterday. A six-time premiership player with the Demons, he was the first to be inducted into the Australian Hall of Fame as a legend, and in 1978 he was named a member of the Order of Australia. Joining us live from Melbourne, footy legend Mick Malthouse. Morning, Mick. As a player, what sort of impact did Ron Barassi have on you?
Well, it's strange because I go back. I was born early 50s, and so by the end of the 50s, his name was already there. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, he's just been an ever-present person. And when you get to know him, you just realise how warm he is, and how informative. He always embraced you as an equal, which we're far from an equal with Ron Barassi, but. If you're lucky enough in the 60s to have a pair of Ron Barassi boots, you had made it. So his impact has been profound for such a long time, but a very, very warm person. And I think that sometimes can, when you say a legend and how great he was and how tough he was, but the warmthness was the thing that really struck me.
Yeah, that's beautiful words there. Warmth is central to Ron Barassi. We've seen some beautiful tributes in and around the AFL community. He was a treasured figure at the Melbourne Football Club, of course. That's where he won his 6 premierships as a player. Well, it's interesting that he's been at 4 clubs, and he keeps coming back to his roots. He comes back to Melbourne. His father played there, and of course he's with Norm Smith as his senior coach, and he had such a great bond with him. It's inevitable, I guess, that you're going to come back where you feel comfortable, and there's no doubt he had such an impact at other football clubs, and real impacts and premierships, particularly at North Melbourne, where they won their first premierships ever. But he always fell back onto safe ground, and the safe ground for him was the Melbourne Football Club. And I don't think he's going to be forgotten at any football club he's been at, but he'll be totally remembered, and remembered forever, really, as a Melbourne player, as such a significant Melbourne player. He can forget that period between the 50s and 60s when he was part of 6 premierships. It's probably unprecedented. Even if someone does equal that, they'll never forget. They'll always remember his great name. Well, what do you think, Mick, players now and in the future can learn from the great Ron Barassi?
Be yourself.
Yeah. He
was tough and hard. Once he crossed that white line, and once he was able to get his team together and play the way he wanted them to play, he was just Ron Barassi. He didn't want to be anyone else. He didn't have to be anyone else. Off the ground, I played against his teams, and I coached against him. And I was a very, very young coach, naive coach in many respects, but he was able to settle younger coaches down. The old Coaches Association, when it meant something, had some wonderful names there: Hafey, Jeans, Kennedy, and Barassi always made a young coach feel as if he should be sitting at the table on the first row. And I'll never forget that, because he embraced football, but he never forgot that he also, at some stage, was a very young coach. I wouldn't say I didn't meet him that often, but when we did, we just had such a warm relationship, and I'll never forget it. It's one of those ones that I don't want to forget.
That's lovely, Mick. We're in the middle of a fierce September campaign right now. You've called already for the Premiership Cup on a few occasions to be named after Ron. Do you think we'll see that happen now?
I'd like to think that we never forget the name of Barassi in football. We know he's an icon. He's done so much for the game. I think if you looked up the dictionary and you looked up AFL, we're going to see his photograph there always. We're always going to be reminded. And I know we talk about the young people today coming through, and they may just look at it and go, we know of Ron Barassi, but we don't know a lot about him. It's almost like an education. I know with my younger players, I like to teach them about certain things from outside just the football world, but this is something that should be taught in the football world about the impact that he has had on football. And the Barassi name's got to be used exclusively for a football event or a football trophy or a football something that just remembers the greatness of the man.
He was a revered figure, is a revered figure. Mick Malthouse, thanks so much for your memories this morning.